So Ladd, you've been the manager of Bowman Industries for 16 years. Talk about what Bowman does and how it's unique.
Bowman's extremely unique in that it's a wool scouring plant. It's a commercial wool scouring plant. There's only 2 of them left in the United States. There's one right here in San Angelo and one in Jamestown, South Carolina. There used to be lots of them, but like everything else, it's moved offshore. Bowman Hat Company actually owns Bowman Industries. We're a hat making company in Adamstown, Pennsylvania. And they own this mill just to get the wool that they felt for hat making comes from this area, so it made sense to be here, and I've run that for 16 years now. So we've had to diversify a little bit. Instead of just washing wool, we also warehouse wool for several companies that buy wool in the United States. So we're kind of a middleman warehouse for several companies to distribute wool that comes in from all over the U.S.
Maybe one of the last vestiges of San Angelo's sheep heritage here in this community.
Everybody always said, San Angelo was, like the sheep and goat capital of the world, and now our numbers have gone down so much, but they're still, San Angelo is a huge influence in the sheep and goat industry all the way around. And yeah, there's more wool that comes through San Angelo probably than anywhere in the United States, even though there's not that much grown right here, but it still comes through some warehouses right here in San Angelo.
Now, from among Bowman's 54 locations, you were selected as the Manager of the Year back in 2015. What earned you that honor?
We're extremely isolated. They have an HR department in Pennsylvania. They have, a credit department. There's a lot of, the bulk of employees are in Pennsylvania. So we're kind of isolated down here, and so it's kind of up to me to do a little bit of everything. Of course, I can always call them, for help, but it's like, hey, here's your property location, make this profitable, do everything it takes to do that, and you're on your own. So, I do talk to Pennsylvania, once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks or something, but other than that, they rely on me to make sure that this place is profitable and that it's running like it's supposed to. So, we've just been real fortunate that business has been good and things have been going well, and I got that award.
What do you like about that sort of autonomy?
I do like it. There's nobody breathing over my shoulder. I report directly to the president. He calls, when I talk to Pennsylvania, that's who I talk to. And, so I know everything that's going on in the company, when it's happening. There's no chain of command I have to go through, to find out, what I'm going to have to do to get something done. I can go straight to him and say, hey, this is what we need. This is what we're going to have to happen to make it work. And he's very trusting in me. He gives me, a lot of authority to make the decisions and go. He'll say, you know it better than I do. I trust you. Go on with it. And so it's been a real good connection between Pennsylvania and myself. So I don't want to have somebody breathing down my neck. And nobody does. But they've given me the freedom to try new things. They've backed me when I wanted to do new things. From 16 years ago to now, we've stretched out and done more things just because the industry has gotten smaller. So we've had to make ourselves more diversified, and they've backed me in everything that I've wanted to try, and it's worked out good. So
now there's also a funny story about how you ended up at Bowman.
I was getting my master's right here at Angelo State, and a friend of mine and I were walking through the parking lot, going home one day, and Brian May was walking through there, and he looked over at me and he was like, hey lad, I got you a job. And which I was like, okay, what are you talking about? And he said, you go over there to Bowman Industries. I told him you'd be there tomorrow about lunch, and they know you're coming. He said it'll be perfect. He says just what you need. You just run over there and talk to Jason Banowski, and he'll take care of you. And he got in his pickup and drove off. I didn't know where Bowman Industries was. I didn't know what they did. I had no clue. So I showed up there the next day and talked to Jason and kind of figured out what they do, and that's where it started. So yeah, I hadn't even graduated yet, and just one day Brian, in less than 2 minutes, told me what I was going to be doing for the next, or maybe he didn't know, but he started what I was going to be doing for the next 16 years anyway.
That's a good story. So you recently hosted Congressman Mike Conaway and 8 other lawmakers who serve on the U.S. Agriculture Committee there at Bowman Industries. What did you talk to them about, and what were you hoping that they were going to be able to learn from you?
Well, you know, and when Mike Conaway's a great man. He's huge in agriculture, and he's one of those guys that's interested in every aspect of it, and he wants to know. You know, he got off the bus and we were walking to the plant, and he said, "Man, I'm embarrassed." He said, "You know, I've been doing this 13 years or whatever it was," and he said, "I've never been to your plant." He said, "I should have been." He said, "You know, this is because it is one of the last remaining scouring plants. You know, it's kind of one of those scenarios where now 80% of the wool in the United States ends up going overseas, and it comes back as, you know, a shirt or socks or whatever it is. And so it's a dying entity, but it's something that Bowman really wants to try to keep. And there's companies left in the United States that want to do, you know, from the ground up USA made. So, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, we just want to show them that we're still there. We're still, you know, offering this. Even though there's only 13 of us at the plant, it affects, you know, a lot of people in the United States. There's a lot of mills that rely on us to keep that American-made tradition going. So, you know, and just the fact that there is still, you know, that the wool industry is still a big industry across the United States, even though it's kind of shrunk right here in Texas.
You grew up with a ranching lifestyle. What about that is special to you?
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's one reason that I stayed in San Angelo. You know, once I'd graduated college, we've ranched since I was, you know, a little kid. We've always had cattle and sheep, and you know, there were things in, you know, going through school where you could go off and maybe make more money and do this or that, but you know, we had ties to the ranching here, and I would just soon stay here and, you know, still have that connection, you know, to ranching. That's just been a part of my life forever, and that's really one reason why Bowman Industries, you know, then the job here was so appealing to me. And you know, don't get me wrong, you know, I love my job, but being able to stay here and do the ranching, and that's something that, you know, now my kids are involved in, and something that's just been a way of life for years. So I wouldn't leave it, you know, at all. I mean, that's just, I mean, I hope that ranching is always part of my life.
You mentioned your kids. What sort of life lessons do you think there are to be learned through ranching?
Oh, the responsibilities of taking care. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, how hot it is. You know, you've got to make sure they've got water, or how cold it is, or when you're feeding. You know, it's not something that you brush aside because you've got other things you want to do. I mean, you know, my wife always tells me, you know, she's like, how come the horses and the cows always come first? And I'm like, well, you know, we stick them in a pen or, you know, a pasture or whatever it is, and they're relying on us for everything they've got to eat or drink. So, you know, that's a huge responsibility that I'm not going to let, you know, I mean, you just can't, you know, you can't brush that aside. So the responsibility, and the kids have already, you know, they've already picked up on that. They realize, well, you know, we've got to go tend to them. So, you know, they'll drop other plans and realize, you know, it used to be kind of a battle. Well, we've got to go do this. No, I don't want to. You know, now that part is almost gone. You know, it's kind of one of those, well, okay, Dad, let's go. but they enjoy it too. I mean, you can see it. So, I mean, you know, there's always parts of things that you enjoy more than others. But, I mean, you know, it's already kind of rubbed off on them. So I think it'll be their lifestyle as well. You
have done a lot in helping agriculture students. In fact, at one point you were aiming to be a high school ag teacher. And you're involved in the Stock Show and Rodeo Association. Is that connection with youth why you're sort of involved in organizations like the Stock Show Association? It
is. It really is. I think, you know, I mean, I think back, yeah, an ag teacher job would have been great, but, you know, every year we get, you know, the kids from ASU, like the freshman classes, they all come, you know, out to Bowman Industries for a tour. They've never seen a scouring plant. And, you know, of course, a lot of wool judging teams, and I help Houston put on the collegiate wool judging down there. And I like, you know, I've taught Sunday school for years, and, you know, coached football and my son's football, you know, basketball, everything. I enjoy kids, any aspect of it, and almost any age of it. So yeah, I mean, the connection to youth is huge, and we still, you know, we get a lot of colleges that come down and go through. We do lots of tours just because Bowman's a unique business, so we get lots of tours that come through, and I like to answer the kids and, you know, let them ask questions, whether it's about wool or whatever. I just like to interact with them.
You mentioned that you are a Sunday school teacher at your church, Christoval Baptist Church, where you're also a deacon. What about your faith experience? How does that shape your life?
Oh, huge. I mean, yeah, you know, there's no doubt that, you know, your faith and what you believe in, to me, it shapes you as a person from the ground up. I mean, that's something that to me is just one of my biggest, joys, is being able to watch youth and help them to grow up. I mean, that to me, that's the biggest decision you can ever make in life, and to be able to help, somebody learn more about the Bible, learn more about Jesus and God and who He is and what He does for us is, I mean, that's one of the highlights of my life. So, I mean, that's something that I don't ever want to quit doing. I'll feel like I'm, let down, on, one of the biggest jobs that God tells me I should be doing. So,
how do you define leadership?
A leader is somebody that should be respected, of course, and to be respected, you have to be, a part. When I think of my employees, I don't want them to say, "Oh, here comes the boss," and run and hide and start working. I think if you're respected by your employees, you're going to get more work out of them anyway. And I don't ask any employee to do anything that I wouldn't do. And for myself, there at the plant, there's not a job I couldn't do. Of course, I can't do them all, so we have people hired to do that. But just leadership is something that is a privilege. Some people, I think you give them authority and they take it too far. I'm not the kind of guy that's, running around pointing the finger and I'm going to, write you up if you don't do this. I don't think that you get a lot from people having to use discipline as a threat. I would rather work with an employee than against an employee, and I feel like you get more out of it if you do that. So to me, if you're a respected person that's not scared to work and not scared to do the job that you're asking somebody else to do, then I think you're an effective leader.
Talk about a leader who's inspired you.
My father, as a father figure, he inspired me. He's been one of those that's led lots of people to do different things. Brian May was actually another one. As a teacher, he had a lot of influence. And, once I got out of school, he was in the wool and mohair business, and I saw how much he did outside of just, being a professor, and the many different aspects, that he has a hand on just right here in San Angelo. And, I realized that, there's other things that, you can do. It's just like, one of my high school coaches in football, it wasn't all about winning or losing, but it was about respect and the way that you're going to live, and and setting morals. I mean, there's a lot of people that have influenced my life. I hate to just name, a few, but I mean, everybody's been affected by people a different way. I mean, some of the people that influenced me in a wrong way, they taught me a life lesson. So I have to say that, it was good that I ran into that person, even though maybe I don't want to run into him again. So, it's not just the good, it's the bad in life that teaches you, how to be a leader. So, I can't name any one person, but there's been a lot of influences, in my life that have made me who I am today. So I appreciate every one of them.
You mentioned your father, Jim Hughes, and golly, a lot of people know who Jim is because he's so deeply involved in the community and civic matters. He once served on the city council. What have you learned from him about service? He's always on to me, well, you ought to be more involved in this and you ought to be more involved in that. And it's just at one of those times my kids are 10 and 13, and, to me, my kids are the biggest thing, and, there's sports, and I just don't have time. But I know it takes people like my dad that will volunteer their time. I mean, you can't, from the presidential election that we had, I mean, you can't stand back and complain about what somebody's doing if you don't get in and be involved and help. And, my dad will get on boards, if he thinks it's for a good cause, he'll put his time and effort into that. And there's got to be people like that, to keep things going. I don't care what level it's at. And maybe I do need to be more involved. I just feel like that, where my kids are right now, they're the biggest thing, to me in my life. And, so I'm going to put all the time I can, and maybe as things slow down kid-wise, then I'll try to, put myself into more, activities and do, more of the things that he did, and try to volunteer and help programs grow. But right now, I just feel like I feel like I'm scattered thin as it is, and so I may not, be in as many things as he is. But, there's a place for that, no doubt, and I don't mind trying to help, any organization, as long as I feel like I have the time to put into it to be, to help them at all. I'm not going to take a position just to take a position. If I can't be there and actually benefit that organization, then I'm not going to do it. So, has he ever encouraged you, or have you ever been tempted to follow him into elected office?
Well, Let's hope not. I mean, I can't say that he's encouraged me to. I don't know that I want to be really into an elective office. I'm not, that's a good question. There's a lot of things that I say I'd never do, and then I look back and I'm like, wow, here I am. And, so life leads you in different directions. I mean, yeah, if I felt the need to do it at the time, maybe I would, but I don't see myself as being in any elected position.
You graduated from Lakeview High School. You earned 2 college degrees from Angelo State, and you've built a life here in San Angelo. What about this place has a grip on you?
Oh, everything about San Angelo. You can go take trips and vacations and see beautiful parts of the world, but you're always ready to come home. I mean, the people here are extremely friendly. I know that we have, extreme heat and extreme cold, but, the weather here is, I guess it's what I'm used to. And, the town is big enough to do whatever you want to do, although it's not huge. We're not the big city. I don't like the big city life. I mean, you can get everything you need and still live in what you want to call a smaller town. And I live in Cristoval, which is just outside of San Angelo. I love it there. Our kids go to school. My wife teaches there, and but yet you can drive 20 miles and you're in town, and it offers anything that anybody needs. So, San Angelo, I've lived here for 30 years now, and it's just part of who I am now. I mean, even if I moved away, I mean, this would still be home to me. So,
Lad, congratulations on being one of the 20 under 40.
Thank you, sir.